Scheherazade through a colonial lens. The problem with Sir Richard Burton's Arabian Nights. In this episode, we are going to talk about one of the most famous books in the world, The 1001 Nights, also known as the Arabian Nights. You probably know the tales of Shahryar, Aladdin, Ali Baba, Sindbad the Sailor, but here's the twist. The version of the Nights that shapes so much of Western imagination doesn't come from the medieval Arabic manuscripts. It comes from translations. Translations deeply colored by Orientalism. And perhaps the most notorious of them all is Sir Richard Francis Burton's version, the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, published in the 1880s. This is why we are going to look at Burton's translation in this series. Despite its infamy, this translation is vulgar, racist, stereotypical, and ultimately a tool of colonial ideology rather than a faithful rendering of the Arabic original. Let's start with the man himself. Richard Francis Burton was a Victorian explorer, soldier, linguist, and writer, an adventurer who thrived on shocking, polite society. He claimed to have mastered dozens of languages, including Arabic, and loved cultivating the image of a rogue scholar. When he translated the Arabian Nights, Burton wasn't just giving the English-speaking world a text, he was giving them a performance, a Victorian fantasy of the Orient. His version ran to 10 volumes, filled not only with the tales, but also hundreds of footnotes, many of them obsessing over sexuality, race, and supposed Eastern depravity. Burton's translation is infamous for its sexual explicitness. Now, yes, the original Nights are not squeaky clean. They include love affairs, betrayals, and even body jokes, but Burton magnifies this far beyond the Arabic text. He lingers over sexual descriptions, adds crude terms, and even invents erotic details. His footnotes dwell on prostitution, homosexuality, bestiality, and all manner of topics that had little to do with the actual tales. It's less about Shahrazade's clever survival and more about titillating his Victorian readers with an erotic-sized sexual spectacle. Scholars like Hussein Hadawi have flat out said Burton's style is alien to the Arabic original, and he essentially hijacked the Nights for Victorian pornographic fantasy. Then there's the racism. Burton repeatedly describes Arab and African characters in animalistic, derogatory terms. His language, words like blackmore and worse, paints non-white characters as grotesque, hideous, lust-driven, and morally corrupt. He leans heavily on stereotypes. Arabs as sensual and lazy, Africans as monstrous and hypersexual, women as cunning seductresses incapable of faithfulness. In Burton's world, the Orient is a playground of excess and depravity, a place both dangerous and alluring, always in need of the irrational, superior European observer that is Burton himself to make sense of it. So how close was Burton to the original Arabic? The answer: not close at all. The Nights were written in Middle Arabic, a straightforward, rhythmic prose with embedded poetry. Hadawi's translation, based on Muhsin Mahdi's critical edition, shows us the tales are elegant, witty, and suspenseful without needing heavy ornamentation. Burton, on the other hand, chose to write in a bizarre, pseudo-medieval English, full of whilom, albeit, and quoth he, to make the stories feel exotic and archaic. The result was more pastiche than translation, more Victorian theater than Arabic literature. Even the famous tales like Aladdin and Ali Baba, these were not the original Arabic manuscripts Burton claimed to translate. They came from earlier French translations themselves, expanded with stories from oral informants. In other words, much of what we think of as the Arabian Nights is more Galland's and Burton's invention than Schaherazade's. Why does this matter today? because Burton's Nights and Orientalist translations like it shaped how generations in the West imagined Asia. The flying carpets, the harems, the lustful sultans, the exotic danger, these images didn't come from authentic Arabic culture. They came from colonial translations. When people consumed these tales, they weren't learning about Arab or Persian culture. They were consuming a fantasy designed to flatter Western superiority and fetishize the Orient as a land of decadence and danger. So the next time you hear the name Scheherazade, remember this. Her true voice was nearly buried under centuries of Orientalist distortion. The Burton version that so many know today may be colorful and dramatic, but it's vulgar, racist, and colonial. It's closer to Victorian fetish than to Arabic storytelling. Fortunately, modern translators like Hussein Hadawi and Yasmin Seal are working to give us versions of the Nights that are faithful, nuanced, and free of colonial distortion. Versions that restore Scheherazade as a wise, brilliant woman, not a pawn in a Victorian fantasy. And maybe in telling her tales anew, we can finally hear her the way her first listeners did. Clever, captivating, and very much in control of her story. A note of this translation you hear in this episode. For this series, I worked with the old Burton translation of the Arabian Nights, but I used some of Hawadawi's translation to modernize the language to make it more accessible, respectful, and engaging for a diverse audience here on YouTube. As mentioned, Burton's translation is some weird wannabe medieval style. Additionally, I did not give Burton's ridiculous footnotes the time of day. It is also important to understand that Burton's 19th century translation is far harsher and more problematic than what you're hearing. His version is filled with vulgar and archaic language that often distorts the tone of the original tales, racist and demeaning descriptions of Arab, African, and Asian characters, sexualized voyeuristic detail that reflects Victorian Orientalist fantasies more than authentic Arabic storytelling, and colonialist stereotypes that misrepresent Asian cultures and reinforce Western superiority. In other words, Burton's translation doesn't just tell Scheherazade's story, it filters them through the lens of Orientalism, making them far more offensive and misleading than the original Arabic tales. By modernizing the text, I've aimed to preserve the heart of the stories, the wit, the suspense, the humanity, while removing the colonial era baggage that made Burton's version vulgar and harmful. I do still recommend that people look over Burton's translation because a lot of the discussion that will take place will be related to this. And if you'd like to experience the Nights in a way closer to the original spirit, I recommend the translations of Hussein Hadawi or Yasmin Seal, which strive to honor both the artistry and the cultural integrity of these timeless tales. Feel free to post questions and comments. When I do the following Q&A in the following episode, I will pick some to answer or read. Now for the reading. The Tale of Scheherazade. Long ago, in ancient times, there lived a mighty king of the Banu Shashan, ruler over the lands of India and China. He was a lord of great armies, loyal guards, countless servants, and devoted followers. He had only 2 sons, one a grown man in his prime, the other still in his youth. Both were courageous and skilled warriors, though the older brother was the more formidable horseman. So it was he who inherited the throne and ruled the land with such fairness and justice that he earned the love of everyone in his capital and across his kingdom. His name was Shahryar. He appointed his younger brother, Shah Zaman, as the king of Samarkand in the land of the barbarians. The 2 brothers continued to rule peacefully in their separate kingdoms where justice was upheld and the law was faithfully enforced. Each governed with fairness and kindness toward their people, living in comfort and contentment. And this harmony lasted for 20 years. But at the end of the 20th year, the elder king began to long for his younger brother and felt a deep need to see him again. so he discussed the idea with his vizier. But the minister, thinking the journey unwise, suggested instead that he send a letter and a gift, inviting the younger brother to come visit the elder king. Taking his advisor's counsel, the king immediately ordered the preparation of lavish gifts, fine horses with gold and jewel-encrusted saddles, slave soldiers, enchanting maidens, and luxurious, high-quality fabrics of great value. He then wrote a letter to Shah Zaman, expressing his deep affection and strong desire to see him again. He ended with these words, "So we kindly ask our beloved brother to honor us with his presence and make the journey to visit us. We have also sent our vizier to handle all arrangements for your journey, for our deepest wish is to see you before we die. If you delay or choose not to come, the sorrow may be more than we can bear. Until then, peace be upon you." Then Shahryar sealed the letter and handed it to the vizier along with the previously mentioned gifts, and ordered him to hurry with all his strength and make the journey there and back as quickly as possible. "Your wish is my command," replied the minister, who immediately began preparing without hesitation. He packed the gifts and gathered everything needed for the journey without delay. It took him 3 days to get everything ready, and at dawn on the 4th day, he took leave of his king and set out immediately, traveling across deserts, hills, rocky terrain, and green meadows without stopping day or night. When he entered a kingdom whose ruler was loyal to his sovereign, he was welcomed with grand gifts of gold, silver, and all sorts of rare and beautiful treasures. He would stay for 3 days, as custom dictated for honored guests, and on the 4th day he would depart with a respectful escort that accompanied him for a full day's journey. As the vizier approached Shah Zaman's court in Samarkand, he sent word ahead through a senior official. The official went before the king, prostrating and kissing the ground between his hands, delivered the message announcing the vizier's arrival. The king then ordered several of his nobles and high-ranking officials to go out and meet his brother's vizier, a full day's journey from the city. They did so, greeting him with respect, offering well wishes for his success, and forming a formal escort and procession to accompany him back. Upon entering the city, he went directly to the palace and appeared before the king. He prostrated and kissed the ground between his hands, offering prayers for the king's health, happiness, and victory over his enemies. Then he delivered the message that the king's brother longed to see him and humbly requested the honor of a visit. He then handed over the letter, which Shah Zaman took and read carefully. It included several subtle hints and messages that required reflection, but once the king fully understood its meaning, he said, "I hear and obey the wishes of my beloved brother." Then he added to the viziers, "However, we will not depart until after the customary 3rd day." He assigned suitable quarters for the vizier within the palace and had tents set up for his soldiers. He also made sure they were provided with everything they needed: food, drink, and other essentials. On the 4th day, he prepared for the journey to join his elder brother and appointed his grand vizier as agent to govern the kingdom in his absence. He then ordered the tents and pack animals to be brought out and set up camp, along with all the baggage, attendants, and guards within sight of the city, ready to depart for his brother's capital the following morning. But halfway through the night, he suddenly remembered something he had forgotten to bring from the palace. Quietly, he slipped away and returned in secret to his private chambers, only to find the queen, his wife, asleep on his own bed, wrapped in the arms of the palace cook, a filthy man with kitchen grease and grime, and repulsive in appearance. When he saw this, his vision darkened with shock and rage. He thought, "If this is what she dares to do while I'm still within sight of the city, what will that treacherous woman get up to during my long absence at my brother's court?" Enraged, he drew his curved sword and with a single strike cut them both into 4 pieces. He left their bodies on the carpet and quietly returned to his camp, telling no one what had happened. telling no one what had happened. He immediately gave the order to depart and set out on his journey at once. But he couldn't stop thinking about his wife's betrayal, constantly repeating to himself, "How could she do this to me? How could she bring about her own death?" Grief overwhelmed him. His complexion turned pale, his body grew weak, and he began to suffer from an illness so severe it seemed it might take his life. So the vizier shortened the day's travel and lingered at watering fountains, doing all he could to comfort and lift the king's spirits. When Shah Zaman approached his brother's capital, he sent ahead couriers and messengers bearing news of his arrival. Shahryar came out to welcome him, accompanied by his viziers, emirs, lords, and nobles of the realm. Overjoyed, he greeted his brother with great affection and ordered the city to be decorated in his honor. However, upon seeing him, Shahryar noticed a change in his brother's complexion and asked what was wrong. Shah Zaman replied, "It's nothing more than the fatigue of travel. I'm just worn out from the journey and adjusting to the change in climate and water. But praise be to Allah for reuniting me with my beloved brother, so dear and rare." With these words, he concealed the truth and continued, "O King of the age and ruler of our time, it is only hardship and exhaustion that have made my face pale and my eyes sunken." When the two brothers entered the capital with full honors, the elder welcomed the younger into the palace overlooking the royal gardens. Over time, seeing that his brother's condition remained the same, Shahryar assumed it was simply due to being away from his homeland and his throne. So he gave him space and didn't press him with questions until one day he finally said, "My brother, I can't help but notice you've grown thinner and your color even more pale." "My brother," replied Shah Zaman, "I suffer from an unseen wound." Yet he still would not reveal what he had discovered about his wife. So Shahryar summoned doctors and healers, commanding them to treat his brother with all their skill. For an entire month, they administered remedies, syrups, and potions, but nothing helped. Shah Zaman could not stop dwelling on his wife's betrayal, and instead of fading, his despair only grew deeper until all the efforts from the physicians proved useless. One day his elder brother said to him, "I'm going out to hunt and ride for sport. Perhaps joining me would lift your spirits." But Shah Zaman refused, replying, "My brother, I have no desire for such things. I beg your pardon to let me remain quietly here in the palace, for I am wholly consumed by my illness." That night, Shah Zaman remained in the palace. The next morning, after his brother had gone out, he left his room and sat at one of the lattice windows overlooking the royal gardens. There he sank into sorrowful thoughts, weighed down by grief over his wife's betrayal, sighing heavily from the pain in his heart. As he sat brooding, a private door of the palace, one carefully kept hidden, suddenly opened. Out came 20 maidens escorting his brother's wife. She was stunningly beautiful, graceful as a gazelle longing for cool water. Startled, Shah Zaman pulled back from the window, but he remained where he could secretly watch without being seen. The group walked beneath his lattice and made their way to the great fountain in the center of the gardens. There they removed their robes and veils, and Shah Zaman was astonished to see that half of them were women, concubines of the king, while the other half were Mamluk slave soldiers. They paired off together, each man with a woman. Meanwhile, the queen, left standing alone, suddenly called out in a loud voice, "Come to me, my lord Sahid." At once from the branches of a nearby tree leapt a large, rough-looking man, dark-skinned and broad, with wild eyes and an unsettling presence. He boldly went to her, threw his arms around her, and she welcomed him eagerly. They embraced and kissed passionately before falling together in open desire. Around them, the other couples also indulged freely, kissing, embracing, and joining with one another without restraint. This continued until the day began to fade. At last, the Mamluk rose from the women, and the dark man parted from the queen. They quickly redressed, and while the men climbed back into the tree, tree, the queen and her companions slipped through the secret door, closing it behind them as if nothing had happened. When Shah Zaman witnessed his sister-in-law's behavior, he thought to himself, "By Allah, my misfortune is lighter than this. My brother is a greater king than I, yet in his own palace this disgrace unfolds, his wife giving herself to the lowest of slaves. This proves that all women are the same. None can be trusted, for every wife betrays her husband. Cursed be they all, and cursed be the fools who rely on them or hand them the reins of their lives." With that, he set aside his grief and despair, easing his sorrow by repeating these words to himself again and again. He added, "It is my belief that no man in this world is safe from their treachery." When supper was served, they set before him large trays of food, and he ate heartily, for he had long refrained from meat, unable to bring himself to touch even the finest dishes. Afterward, he gave thanks to Almighty Allah, praising and blessing him. That night, he slept peacefully, the first truly restful sleep he had enjoyed in a very long time. The next day, he ate a full breakfast and soon began to regain his health and strength until before long he was in excellent condition again. 10 days later, his brother returned from the hunt, and Shah Zaman rode out to meet him. They greeted one another warmly, and when Shahryar looked at his brother, he was astonished to see a healthy color back in his face, his cheeks now ruddy, and his appetite restored after so long a period of meager eating. Greatly surprised, Shahryar said, "My brother, I had so hoped you would join me in the hunt and enjoy the pleasures of my land." Shah Zaman thanked him and offered his excuses. Then they mounted their horses together and returned to the city. Once they were comfortably seated in the palace, the trays of food were set before them and they ate until they were satisfied. After the meal was cleared away and they had washed their hands, Shahryar turned to his brother and said, "I cannot help but wonder at the change in you. When I wished to take you with me on the hunt, I saw how pale and troubled you looked, and I feared greatly for your health. But now, praise be to God, your natural color has returned, and you seem once again in excellent health. I had believed your illness came from being parted from your family and far from your kingdom, so I did not burden you with questions. Yet now I beg you tell me what has brought about your recovery and restored the healthy color I see in you once more. Speak openly and hide nothing from me." When Shah Zaman heard this, he bowed his head for a moment, then lifted it and said, "I will tell you what brought on my illness and the loss of my color. But as for what restored me to health, I must beg your pardon. I cannot share that, and I pray you will not press me for an answer." Shahryar, greatly surprised by these words, said, "Then at least tell me first what caused your pale appearance and poor condition." "Know then, my brother," replied Shah Zaman, "that when you sent your vizier inviting me to come to you, I prepared to leave my city at once. But I suddenly remembered that I had forgotten in the palace a string of jewels I meant to give you as a gift. So I returned alone to fetch it, and there I found my wife lying on my own bed in the arms of our cook. In my rage, I killed them both and set out to join you. Yet ever since, my mind has been haunted by what I saw, and the weight of it drained the color from my face and left me weak. But forgive me if I still refuse to reveal what brought my health and color back again." Shahryar shook his head in astonishment, anger blazing in his heart. "Truly," he exclaimed, "the treachery of a woman is a mighty thing." He then sought refuge with Allah and continued, "Indeed, my brother, you spared yourself much evil by putting your wife to death. Your anger and grief were well justified, for never has such a misfortune befallen a king like you. By Allah, had it happened to me, I would not have rested until I had slain 1,000 women, and down that path lies only madness. But praise be to Allah, who has ended your trial. Yet now you must tell me what so suddenly restored your health and color, and why you keep this hidden from me. O king of this age, once again I beg you to excuse me from doing so. No, you must tell me. I fear, my brother, that telling you may bring you even greater anger and sorrow than I myself have endured." "All the more reason you should tell me everything," said Shahryar. "I beg you, by Allah, do not keep anything from me." So Shah Zaman told him everything he had witnessed, from beginning to end. When I saw your misfortune, my brother, and the betrayal of your wife, and remembered that you are both older than I and greater in power, my own sorrow seemed small in comparison. That thought restored my strength of mind, and I was able to cast off my grief and despair. I ate, drank, and slept again, and thus I quickly regained my health. This is the truth, the whole truth. When Shahryar heard this, he was seized with furious anger, so great it nearly choked him. But after a moment he regained his composure and said, My brother, I do not doubt your word, yet I cannot truly believe it until I see it with my own eyes. If you truly wish to see your misfortune yourselves, said Shah Zaman, then rise at once and prepare to go hunting again. But instead of leaving, conceal yourself with me, and you shall witness it with your own eyes. Let's, said the king. Then he proclaimed his intention to travel, and the troops in tents marched out of the city and set up camp within sight of its walls. Shahryar went out with them and took his place in the center of his army, ordering his servants to admit no one to his presence. When night fell, Shahryar summoned his vizier and said, Sit in my place and let no one know of my absence for the next 3 days. Then the two brothers disguised themselves and under cover of darkness secretly returned to the palace. They spent the night there, and at dawn they took their seats at the lattice window overlooking the royal gardens. Soon the queen appeared with her handmaidens, just as before, and they made their way to the fountain. There they disrobed, revealing half of them were women and the other half Mamluk slave soldiers. Then the queen cried aloud, Where are you, Shahid? Immediately a large, dark-skinned man dropped from a tree and rushed into her embrace without hesitation, exclaiming, I am Shahid al-Din Saud. The queen laughed joyfully, and soon all of them gave themselves over to pleasure, remaining in their revelry for several hours. At last the Mamluk rose from the arms of the maidens, and Shahid parted from the queen. They all entered the fountain's basin and performed the full ritual cleansing. Then, dressing once more, they returned through the secret door as they had before. When Shahryar witnessed the disgrace of his wife and concubines, he was overcome with shock and cried out, Only in complete solitude can a man be safe from the corruption of this vile world. By Allah, life is nothing but one great injustice. Then, after a moment, he added, Do not stand in my way, my brother, in what I intend to do. To this, Shah Zaman replied, I will not. So he said, Let us rise, as we are to leave this place at once. For we have no more desire for kingship. Instead, let us wander across Allah's earth, devoting ourselves to his worship until we find another who has suffered a misfortune like ours. If we find no one, then death itself will be more welcome to us than life. So the two brothers slipped out through the second hidden gate of the palace and traveled without rest, day and night, until they came to a meadow where a tree stood beside a spring of sweet water not far from the shore of the sea. They drank deeply and sat down to rest, but after about an hour they suddenly heard a tremendous roar rising from the sea, so loud it seemed as if the heavens themselves were collapsing into the earth. The waves broke violently before them, and from the water rose a towering black column that grew higher and higher until it seemed to touch the sky. It moved steadily toward the meadow. Terrified, the brothers quickly climbed to the top of the tall tree, hoping to see what it might be. To their astonishment, it was a mighty jinni, enormous in height and massive in build, with a broad brow and dark skin, carrying on his head a crystal coffer. Striding through the sea, he came ashore and sat down directly beneath the very tree the brothers hid. He set the coffer before him, unlocked it with 7 iron keys, and drew out a casket secured with 7 steel padlocks. Opening these one by one, he revealed a young woman of dazzling beauty. Her skin was fair, her figure slender and graceful, and her presence shone like the full moon on the 14th night, or like the sun casting its radiant light. Even so, the poet Oteia said, She rose like the dawn, shining through the night, and graced the grove with her radiant light. From her glow, the sun gains its gleaming fire. When she unveiled swells, outshining the moon's bright attire. All creation bows before her hands as she reveals her beauty and no veil to stand. She floods the cities with a torrent of tears when her glance strikes forth like lightning appears. The Jinni seated her beneath the tree at his side and said, "O dearest love of my heart, O lady of noble birth, whom I carried away on your wedding night so that none can claim you before I did, and whom no one but I has ever touched, my beloved, I long to rest a while." And he laid his head upon her lap, stretching his legs so far they reached down to the sea, and soon he slept, snoring loudly, the sound rolling like thunder. After a while, she lifted her gaze toward the top of the tree and spotted the two kings hiding near its summit. Gently, she slid the Jinni's head from her lap, weary of holding it, and laid it on the ground. Then she stood beneath the tree and beckoned to the kings, signaling, "Come down, both of you, and have no fear of this Ifrit." The two were struck with terror when they realized she had seen them, and they called back in the same hushed tone, "We beg you, by Allah and by your honor, O lady, spare us, and do not ask us to come down." But she replied, "By Allah, you both must come down at once. If you refuse, I will wake my husband, this Ifrit, and he will put you to death in the most terrible way." All the while, she kept signaling for them to descend. Terrified, they climbed down to her. She stood before them and said, "Take me now with all your strength, without hesitation, or I will wake this Ifrit and he will kill you on the spot. O lady, we beg you by Allah, spare us this deed. We are fugitives already, and we live in constant fear and terror of your husband. How then could we possibly do what you ask?" "Enough of this talk. It must be done," she said firmly. And she swore by him who raised the heavens without pillar or support, that if they refused her will, she would have them slain and their bodies cast into the sea. Terrified, Shahryar turned to Shah Zaman and said, "My brother, do as she commands." But Shah Zaman replied, "I will not unless you do it first." The two brothers began to argue over who should lie with her. Seeing this, she said to them, "Why do I see you hesitating and disputing? If you will not come forward like men and do what is required, I will wake the Ifrit upon you." At this, out of sheer terror of the Jinni, they both did as she commanded. When they had finished with her, she said, "Well done." Then she reached into her pocket, drew out a purse, and from it produced a knotted string upon which strung 570 rings. Holding it up, she said, "Do you know what these are?" They replied, "We do not." Then she said, "These are the rings of 570 men who have all lain with me right under the nose of this vile, foolish, filthy Ifrit. So now give me your 2 seal rings as well, you brothers." When they had removed their rings and handed them to her, she continued, "Know this, on my wedding night, this Ifrit carried me away, shut me inside a casket locked within a coffer, and secured it with 7 strong steel padlocks. He then cast me into the depths of the raging sea, guarded me closely so that I might remain chaste and untouched, so that no one but he could have me. But I have taken as many human lovers as I pleased, and this wretched Jinni has no idea, for fate cannot be prevented nor resisted, and whatever a woman wills, she will surely accomplish, whether a man consents or not. So trust not in women, place no faith in their hearts, for their joys and their sorrows are ruled by their desires. They'll swear to you love, but deception never departs. Remember Yusuf and beware their cunning, for it brings only pain. Did not Iblis drive Adam from paradise through their wiles? And hold your blame, my friend, for scolding only drives the heart to madness. The fault is not as great as the fault you find in it. If one becomes a true lover, they have suffered nothing more than what countless others have endured before. Blessed indeed is the man, and worthy of praise, who has kept himself safe from the snares of a woman's wit." When the brothers heard her confession, they were utterly astonished. Then she returned to the Ifrit, placed his head back upon her thigh as before, and whispered to them, "Now go on your way, and keep well beyond the reach of his wrath." So they went on their way, saying to one another, "Allah, Allah, there is no majesty and no might except in Allah." the gracious, the great. In him alone we seek refuge from the malice of deceitful women, for truly nothing equals it in power. Think, my brother, of this astounding woman and how she has outwitted even an Ifrit, far stronger than either of us. Since he has suffered a misfortune greater than ours, let that be our consolation. Now let us return to our lands and our thrones, and resolve never again to marry women. Soon enough we shall show them what we intend to do. They rode back to Shahryar's camp and arrived on the morning of the third day. Summoning the viziers, emirs, chamberlains, and the high officials, Shahryar presented his regent with a robe of honor and ordered an immediate return to the city. Once seated upon his throne, he called for the Grand Vizier, the father of 2 young women who, God willing, will soon be mentioned, and commanded, "Take my wife and put her to death, for she has broken her vow and betrayed her faith." So the vizier led her to the place of execution, and there she was put to death. Then Shahryar took up his sword and went to the women's quarters, where he killed all the concubines and their Mamluks. He then swore a solemn and binding oath that any woman he married, he would take her maidenhead at night and have her executed the next morning, so as to safeguard his honor. For, he declared, there has never been, nor is there now, a truly faithful woman on the face of the earth. Then Shah Zaman asked permission to return to his own land. With full honors and an escort, he departed and journeyed until he reached his kingdom. Meanwhile, Shahryar ordered his vizier to bring him a bride for the night, so that he might lie with her. The vizier presented the most beautiful young woman, the daughter of an emir. That evening the king took her to his bed, and when morning came, he commanded his minister to strike off her head, and the vizier, fearing the king's wrath, carried out the order. In this way he continued for 3 years, marrying a new maiden each night and having her killed the next morning. At last the people raised a great outcry against him, cursing his name and praying for Allah to utterly destroy both him and his reign. The women cried out in despair. Mothers wept, and parents fled with their daughters, until not a single woman fit for marriage remained in the city. At last the king commanded his Grand Vizier, the same minister who had carried out all the executions, to bring him another virgin, as was his custom. But the minister went out searching, and he could find none. He returned home in deep sorrow and fear, dreading for his life should he fail the king. The vizier had 2 daughters, named Scheherazade and Dunyazad. The elder, Scheherazade, was well read in books, chronicles, and the legends of former kings, as well as the stories, lessons, and the examples of peoples long past. It was said she had collected thousands of volumes recounting the histories of ancient nations and rulers now gone. She knew the works of the poets by heart, and she had studied philosophy, science, and the arts. She was graceful and courteous, wise and witty, cultured and accomplished. That very day she noticed her father's troubled look and asked, "Father, why do I see you so changed, weighed down with such worry and care? For, as one of the poets has said, tell one who sorrows, grief will not stay. Just as joy has no tomorrow, so sorrow will fade away." When the vizier heard his daughter's words, he told her everything that had happened between him and the king, from the beginning to the end. Then she said, "By Allah, father, how much longer will this slaughter of women continue? Shall I tell you what I have in mind, something that might save both the people and the king from ruin?" "Speak, my daughter," he said, and she replied, "I wish for you to give me in marriage to King Shahryar. Either I will survive, or I will serve as a ransom for the virgin daughters of the Muslims, becoming the means of their deliverance from his hand and from yours." "By Allah," he cried, his wrath blazing beyond control, "O foolish girl, do not throw your life into such peril. How dare you speak to me with words so far from wisdom and so close to folly? Know this, one who lacks experience in the ways of the world easily falls into misfortune, and he who does not consider the end will find no friend in life. As the saying goes, I was resting in peace, only my own meddling brought brought me grief." "You must allow it," she interrupted firmly. "Let me perform this good deed, and if he kills me, so be it. I shall die only as a ransom for others." "My daughter," he said, "what good will that do you when it costs you your life?" She replied, "Father, it must be done, whatever may come of it." Once again the vizier grew angry, scolding and reproaching her. At last he said, "Truly I fear the same fate may befall you as befell the bull and the ass, the merchant." "And what was that, father?" she asked. So the vizier began to tell her the tale of the bull and the ass. "Know then, my daughter, that there was once a wealthy merchant who owned great sums of money, many slaves, and vast herds of cattle and camels. He had a wife and children and lived in the countryside, skilled in farming and devoted to the land. Allah Most High had granted him the rare gift of understanding the speech of all beasts and birds, but on the condition that if he ever revealed this secret, he would die. So out of fear, he kept the gift hidden. In his cowshed, he kept a bull and a donkey, each tied in its own stall, standing side by side. One day, as the merchant sat nearby with his servants while his children played around him, he heard the bull speak to the donkey. "Hail to you, O father of walking! You enjoyed such ease and comfort. Your stall is always clean and freshly sprinkled. Men wait on you, brush you down, and feed you sifted barley. Your drink is pure spring water. But I, poor wretch that I am dragged out in the middle of the night, and they place a plow and heavy yoke upon my neck. From dawn until sunset, I strain at the earth, breaking the soil without rest. I am worked so far beyond my strength, and endure every kind of harsh treatment day after day. Then, sore and exhausted, I am driven back with my sides sore, my neck rubbed raw, my legs aching, and my eyes swollen from tears. They shut me in the stall and throw me beans mixed with crushed straw, dirt, and chaff, and I lie all night in filth and foul stench. But you, always at ease, work only when the master has some errand, and even then it is rare. He simply mounts you, rides you to town, and comes back with you straight away. So while I labor and suffer, you enjoy rest and comfort. You sleep while I remain sleepless. You eat your fill while I go hungry. You are cherished while I am despised." When the bull finished speaking, the donkey turned to him and said, "O broad of brow, O poor fool, they were not wrong to call you bull-headed. You, O father of the bull, have no foresight and no cunning. You are the simplest of simpletons, knowing nothing of wise counsel. Have you not heard what the wise have said? I bear the hardship, the labor, the care, while others take pleasure and leave me the wear, like the bleacher who burns in the hot sun's rays to whiten the cloth that another will display. But you, O fool," the donkey went on, "are full of blind zeal. You toil and sweat without thought, wearing yourself out in all, but killing yourself just so another may live in comfort. Have you never heard the saying, 'He who has no guide soon goes astray'? Every day you leave at dawn and do not return until sundown, enduring nothing but hardship, beatings, lashings, and harsh words. And yet, when they tie you to your filthy manger, you stamp the ground with your forehead, kick with your hind legs, push with your horns, and bellow so loudly that they believe you are content. And when they throw you fodder, you devour it greedily, stuffing your belly as if all were well. Now listen to me, Sir Bull. If you take my advice, your life will be easier than mine. Tomorrow, when they take you to the field and place that thing they call a yoke upon your neck, lie down and refuse to rise, no matter how they beat you. If you are forced up, fall again. And when they bring you home and set beans before you, churn away, sniff at them, but do not eat. Only nibble at the straw and chaff. Pretend to be sick and keep this up for a day, 2, or even 3. Soon they will spare you your toil and give you rest." When the bull heard these words, he realized the donkey was a true friend and thanked him, saying, "Your advice is wise indeed." He prayed that every blessing might be granted to him and cried, "O father of good counsel, you have made up for my shortcomings." Now, my daughter, the merchant understood everything that had passed between the bull and the donkey. The next day, the plowman took the bull out as usual and set the plow upon his neck and drove him to work. But the bull, remembering the donkey's advice, began to shirk his labor. The plowman beat him soundly until the bull broke the yoke and tried to run, but the man caught him, thrashed him again, and the poor beast nearly despaired of his life. Still, the bull would do nothing but stand still or drop to the ground until evening. At last, the herdsman led him home and tied him to a stall, but this time the bull drew back from his manger. He neither stamped, nor butted, nor bellowed, as he usually did, and the herdsman was puzzled. He placed beans and husk before him, but the bull only sniffed at the food, turned away, and lay down as far from it as he could. Thus he passed the whole night fasting. The next morning the peasant came and found the manger still full of beans and straw untouched. The bull lay on his side in a pitiful state, laid stretched out, his belly swollen. Worried, the man said to him, "By Allah, he must surely be sick. That must be why he refused to plow yesterday." So he went to the merchant and reported, "Master, the bull is ailing. He would not touch his fodder last night, and this morning he has not eaten a single bite." Now the merchant, knowing the truth, since he had overheard the conversation between the bull and the donkey, said, "Take that rascal of a donkey, put the yoke on his neck, harness him to the plow, and make him do the bull's work." So the plowman took the donkey and made him work the bull's task through the long day. When the donkey weakened, the man beat him with such force that his ribs ached, his sides grew hollow, and the yoke flayed his skin from his neck. By evening, the poor beast could hardly drag himself home, his legs trembling beneath him. Meanwhile, the bull had spent the day stretched out in comfort, eating his fodder with a hearty appetite. All the while, he kept calling down blessings on the donkey for his wise advice, never knowing the misery his friend had suffered on his account. When night fell and the donkey returned to the stable, the bull rose to greet him respectfully and said, "Good news to you, O wise counselor. Thanks to you, I've rested the whole day and eaten my fodder in peace and comfort." But the donkey gave no reply, for he was overcome with anger, pain, exhaustion, and the sting of his beating. He bitterly repented, saying to himself, "This is the price of my foolishness in giving good counsel. As the proverb says, I was at ease and gladness, but only my own meddling brought me this misery. Still, I will remember my true worth and the nobility of my nature, for as the poet says, shall the basil lose its fragrance and hue just because the beetle crawls across its leaf? And though spider and fly dwell in the royal hall, shall that bring disgrace upon its walls? The cowrie shell may have its use as coin, but shall the pearl's pure drop lose its value? And now I must think of a plan, set a trick in motion, and get him back to his place, or else I am finished." Then the donkey, utterly exhausted, went wearily to his manger, while the bull continued to thank him and call down blessings upon him. "And so it will be with you, my daughter," said the vizier. "You will die for lack of wisdom. Sit quietly, say nothing, and do not throw your life into such peril. By Allah, I give you this advice only out of love and deep concern for you." "My father," she replied, "I must go to this king and become his wife." He said, "Do not do this, my daughter." But she replied, "In truth I will." At this he answered, "If you will not be silent and stay your course, I shall deal with you as the merchant dealt with his wife." "And what did he do?" she asked. "Know then," the vizier replied, "that after the donkey returned, the merchant went up to the roof terrace with his wife and children, for it was a bright night with the full moon shining. The terrace overlooked the cowshed, and as he sat there with his children playing around him, the merchant heard the donkey say to the bull, Tell me, O broad of brow, what do you plan for tomorrow?" The bull replied, "What else but to keep following your advice, O father of fools? Truly, it was the best counsel, for it has given me rest and ease. I won't stray from it in the least. So when they bring me my feed tomorrow, I'll refuse it, puff out my belly, and pretend to be sick." The donkey shook his head and said, "Beware of doing that, O father of a bull." The bull asked why. The donkey replied, "Because I am about to give you the best advice. I heard our master tell the herdsman, if the bull does not rise this morning and do his work, and if he refuses his fodder today, hand him over to the butcher. Let him be slaughtered, his meat given to the poor, and his hide made into leather. I fear for you, my friend, so heed my advice before disaster strikes. When they bring your fodder, eat it, rise up, bellow and paw the ground, or our master will surely have you killed. Peace be with you. At this, the bull got up, let out a loud bellow, and thanked the donkey. Tomorrow, he said, I will gladly go out with them. Then he eagerly ate all his fodder and even licked the manger clean. All the while, their owner was listening to their conversation. The next morning, the merchant and his wife went to the bull's stall and sat nearby. The herdsman came and let the bull out, and when the bull saw his master, he whisked his tail and let out a loud fart, and pranced about so playfully that the merchant burst into laughter, laughing so hard he fell onto his back. His wife, astonished, asked, "Why are you laughing so loudly?" He replied, "I laughed at a secret thing I heard and saw, but I cannot tell you what it was, for if I do, I shall surely die." She replied, "You must tell me, by force if need be, and reveal the cause of your laughter, even if it costs your life." But he answered, "I cannot reveal what the beasts and birds say in their own tongue, for I fear it will bring about my death." Then she said, "By Allah, you are lying. This is nothing but an excuse. You laugh at no one but me, and now you would hide something from me. But by the Lord of the heavens, if you do not tell me what it is, I will no longer live with you. I will leave you at once." And with that she sat down and began to weep. At this the merchant cried, "Woe to you! Why do you weep so? Fear Allah and stop speaking this way. Ask me no more questions." "You must tell me the cause of that laugh," she insisted. He replied, "You know well that when I prayed to Allah to grant me the gift of understanding the speech of beasts and birds, I vowed never to reveal the secret to anyone, under penalty of dying on the spot." "No matter," she cried, "tell me the secret of what passed between the bull and the donkey, and die this very hour if you must." And she would not stop pressing him until he was utterly worn down and driven to despair. At last he said, "Call your father and mother, our family, and some of our neighbors." She did as he asked, and he also summoned the judge as his witness, for he intended to make his will, reveal his secret to her, and then die. For he loved her deeply, and she was his cousin, the daughter of his father's brother, the mother of his children, and they had lived together for 120 years. When all the family and neighbors had gathered, he said to them, "I have a strange tale to tell, but know this, if I reveal my secret to anyone, I will surely die." So everyone present said to the woman, "For Allah's sake, give up this sinful stubbornness and recognize the truth of this matter, lest your husband, the father of your children, should die." But she replied, "I will not turn from this until he tells me, even if it cost him his life." So they stopped trying to persuade her. Then the merchant rose, left their company, and went to an outhouse to perform his ablutions. He intended afterward to return, reveal his secret, and accept his death. Now, my daughter, Scheherazade, that merchant kept about 50 hens in his outhouses, all under the charge of a single rooster. As the merchant prepared to bid farewell to his family, he overheard one of his farm dogs speaking in his own tongue to the rooster. The rooster was flapping his wings, crying loudly, and leaping from hen to hen, mating with each in turn. The dog said, "O rooster, how foolish is your wit and how shameless your behavior. Cursed be the one who raised you. Are you not ashamed of yourself, carrying on like this on such a day as this?" "And what," asked the rooster, "has happened this day?" The dog replied, "Do you not know? Our master is preparing for his death. His wife insists he reveal the secret Allah granted him, and the moment he does, he will surely die. We dogs are all in mourning, yet you flap your wings, crow your loudest, and mount one hen after another. Is this truly a time for play and pleasure? Have you no shame?" "By Allah," said the rooster, "our master is a fool and a man of little sense. If he cannot manage a single wife, then his life is hardly worth preserving. Look at me. I have some 50 hens. I please one, provoke another, starve this one, and feed that one. And through my clever management, they all remain under my control. Yet our master claims to be wise, but he has but one wife, and still he cannot manage her. The dog asked, "Then tell me, O rooster, what should our master do to escape his trouble?" "He should get up at once," answered the rooster, "take some switches from the mulberry tree, and give her a thorough beating until she cries, 'I repent, my lord. I will never question you again for as long as I live.' Then he should strike her once more firmly to make sure she remembers. After that, he will sleep without worry and live in peace. But as it stands, our master has no sense or judgment at all. Now, my daughter Scheherazade," the vizier continued, "I will deal with you as that husband dealt with his wife." Scheherazade asked, "And what did he do?" He replied, "When the merchant heard the wise words of the rooster and dog, he quickly went to his wife's chamber, first cutting some mulberry twigs and hiding them there. Then he called to her, saying, 'Come to the closet, so I may tell you the secret where none can see us before I die.' She entered with him, and he locked the door. But instead of revealing the secret, he beat her soundly with the twigs, striking her back, shoulders, ribs, arms, and legs, all the while saying, 'Will you keep asking questions about matters that do not concern you?' At last she cried out, nearly senseless, 'I repent. By Allah, I will ask you no more questions. Truly, I repent with all my heart.' Then she kissed his hands and feet, and he led her from the room, humble and obedient as a wife should be. Her parents and all the company rejoiced. The saddest in mourning turned to joy and gladness. Thus the merchant learned household discipline from his rooster, and from that day he and his wife lived together happily until death. And you as well, my daughter," the vizier warned. "Unless you turn away from this matter, I will treat you as the merchant treated his wife." But she answered firmly, "I will never give up, father, nor shall this tale change my resolve. Spare me such talk. I will not listen. If you deny me, I will marry him myself, whether you consent or not. I will go to the king and say to him, 'I begged my father to give me to you in marriage, but he refused.' Determined to defy his sovereign, begrudging one such as me to one such as you." Her father asked, "Must it truly be so?" And she replied, "Yes, it must." At last, the vizier, weary from all his pleading and arguing, finding it useless, went before King Shahryar. After offering his blessings and bowing low to the ground, he told the king the whole story of the dispute with his daughter, and how she had resolved to come to him that very night. The king was astonished beyond measure, for he had made a special exception of the vizier's daughter. He said, "O most trusted counselors, how can this be? You know well that I have sworn by him who raised the heavens that after I unite with her tonight, I will say to you tomorrow morning, 'Take her and slay her.' And if you do not, I will surely slay you in her place. May Allah guide you to glory and grant you a long life, O king of the age." The vizier replied, "It is she who has made this decision. I have told her all of this and more, but she will not listen to me. She is determined to spend the coming night with your majesty." So Shahryar rejoiced greatly and said, "Very well, go prepare her and bring her to me." The vizier returned to his daughter and told her the king's command, saying, "May Allah never leave your father desolate by your loss." But Scheherazade rejoiced with great joy and prepared all that she needed. Then she said to her younger sister, Dunyazad, "Pay close attention to the instructions I give you. When I have gone to the king, I will send for you. When you come to me and see that he has taken his pleasure with me, say, 'Oh, sister, if you are not yet sleepy, tell me a new story, something delightful and entertaining, to help us pass the night.' Then I will begin a tale that, if Allah wills, will be our deliverance and will turn the king away from his bloodthirsty custom." Dunyazad replied, "With love and with joy I will." So that night their father, the vizier, brought Scheherazade to the king. The king was pleased at the sight of her and asked, "Have you brought me what I desired?" The vizier replied, "I have." Then the king led her to his bed and began to caress her, intending to consummate the marriage. But Scheherazade began to weep, and the king asked, "What troubles you?" She answered, "O king of the age, I have a younger sister, and I would dearly like to bid her farewell tonight before the dawn arrives." So he immediately sent for Dunyazad, and she came and kissed the ground before him. The king permitted her to sit near the head of the sofa. Then he consummated the marriage with Scheherazade, and afterward fell asleep. But when midnight came, Scheherazade awoke and gave a signal to her sister. Dunyazad sat up and said, "By Allah, my sister, tell us a new tale, something delightful and captivating, to help us pass the hours of this late night." "With joy and gladness," Scheherazade answered, "if this noble and gracious king will grant me permission." "Tell it then," said the king, who happened to be sleepless and restless and was glad at the thought of hearing her tell. Scheherazade rejoiced, and so, on the very first night of her storytelling, she began with the tale of the merchant and the Jinni. I've got some questions already lined up for our upcoming Q&A, but I want you to be part of the conversation too. Drop your thoughts and questions down in the comments. I will be picking some of them to answer, and I will share a few of your responses during the Q&A. So don't be shy. Let's make this a real discussion. Thanks for listening.